guess we're not going to wait for Kristen.
How'd you like your first pile house?
Oh, we're on the screen. You go. Okay, we're going to call to order the February 18th meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The roll call.
Ms. Odom?
Present.
Mr. Kincaid?
Present.
Ms. Longstreet? Mr. Mithers?
Here.
Mr. Pranis? Mr. King?
Here.
Mr. Eidem?
Here. Okay, our first order of business is discussion and approval of the minutes of the Planning and Zoning Board meeting for January 21st.
So moved.
Any discussion on the minutes? Any changes? Anybody?
No.
We got a motion, got a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, our next agenda item. We have a request to remove a 60-inch diameter at breast height oak tree in the proposed building footprint of a new single-family residence on,
Public comment before.
okay,
Sorry.
before new business.
We understand.
And I already was warned that we had some public comment. Okay, we have time in our agenda here for public comment for anything that's not on the agenda. Mr. Thompson?
So, Craig Thompson, number 6 D Street. I'm here to talk about climate change, sea level rise, and sustainable future. As a member of CPAC, we've put together a little binder which projects, reference books, research papers, and maps, which will be on the city manager's tabletop if anybody's interested in items that we're collecting and working on. Most recently, looking at storm surge and flooding threats, there are a couple areas of town that are really concerned, and they're currently under development. One is the Embassy Suites site, the other is the retention pond where our water gets dumped into the intercoastal. That's 100% designed now. The new comp plan requires that development projects take into effect climate change and sea level rise in the development of them. So I have written a letter to planning and Mr. Law asking that certain things be looked at relative to those two projects, plus that ordinance which is before you tonight, a precedent that was set by the landowner taking, a good portion of the dune and putting it onto his property. I know you're reviewing that tonight, but this is the after where you can see the new lawn is established, the sand and a playground area, in part of the dune area. And my concern is the adjacent neighbor is about 3 or 4 feet below that dune structure that was pulled in. So there are provisions for flood protection in the LDRs, which should be reviewed, and that could apply to this. So I hope the staff can give you a good report on that, and also the other projects. My understanding is I looked at some of the construction plans for the retention pond, and they're putting 1.5 feet on top of a 6-foot high berm. The old berm failed in the Category 2 storm and storm surge, which is about 6-7 feet. So if we have greater that a Category 2, the likelihood that the berm would fail again. And the problem with this is that the stormwater system is efficient in piping the water from all the way along US 1 all the way to the retention pond, which is on the far side, of the city. So if water comes in at a location here, which is a washover area, it's going to come down the street and be pumped through the city in some ditches, some pipes, et cetera. And the same if the ocean, if the intercoastal rises and it comes in from the west, it's a direct pipe in. So I think there should be some consideration for Plan B. If we do get a storm, what happens with all this water, So it's not a short-term thing. As CPAC, we work on long-term planning issues, but I just wanted you to be aware of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to turn these in for record, so you'll have it.
With any other public comment? Okay, we'll close public comment. Now we're on the 60-inch tree removal. And it's a single-family residence on Lot 39, Ridge, at St. Augustine Beach, 340 Ridgeway Road.
Good evening, everyone. Good to see everyone again. This is a tree removal request for a 60-inch diameter at breast height oak tree that is in the rear building footprint of a proposed new home. The 60-inch oak is right here by the X. Unfortunately, it is approximately 40 feet in from the rear setback. And even though the ridge at St. Augustine Beach has a variance granted to allow the preservation of trees, setbacks can be moved back and forth 7.5 feet either way in the front or rear, and 5 feet either way on the side. But even if this tree was moved in 7.5 feet in the rear, the house was moved forward, the 60-inch diameter at breast height oak tree could not be saved. It's a tree cluster, and there are a significant amount of other trees on the lot. My memo references this 55-inch oak tree in the front. In my memo, I have 50-inch, and actually the site plan, looking at it today, I saw that it's 55 inches. This tree right here will be saved. The flexible setbacks on the side have been applied to save this 30-inch diameter at breast height oak tree on the side. So we have a 13-foot side setback on the west side, a 7-foot side setback on the east side to save this tree. And there's also a 24-inch oak in the front that will be saved, along with a lot of smaller other trees. So we have a representative from Riverside Homes here tonight. Works for the builder, who's here to answer any questions. Turn it over to you guys.
Okay. Anybody on the board have any questions for Bonnie? No.
No.
Any questions for the builder?
Not here.
Huh? No. Okay, anybody have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the removal of the 60-inch diameter at breast height oak tree in the proposed building footprint of a new single-family resident on Lot 39, Ridge at St. Augustine Beach.
I'll second it.
Motion made and second. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, our next item is a land use variance for an ISR variance.
The variance to a lot in Sea Colony at 184 Sea Colony Parkway. The applicants are applying to build a 464 square foot in-ground pool with a safety walkway around the pool, addition to their existing single-family home. Sea Colony is zoned low-density residential for a total maximum ISR coverage of 40%. The applicants are asking for the variance to exceed this and go up to 55% with the 464 square foot in-ground pool and pool safety walkway addition. The Sea Colony HOA has approved their request for the pool and the walkway around the pool. And we are presenting this to the applicants. Mr. and Mrs. Roberson are here. My memo also points out that if the proposed revisions to section 6.01.2 of the LDRs, which addresses the 40% maximum ISR coverage for low density, if this goes through the city commission on the final reading, low density residential will be allowed a 465 square foot addition for pools and pool decking in low density residential. The applicants applied before it went through. We weren't sure what was going to happen with it at the time, so they are here to answer any questions, and so is staff.
Any questions of Bonnie?
Not right now.
Not now. I spoke to
I won't go far.
Bonnie and Ryan
I'm
Law
going to leave
about
this as a
this
site
issue
plan,
today.
You spoke to him already?
Yeah.
see the
I
lot
spoke to him,
dimensions
just
and
wanna
ISR.
Mention that.
Okay. Applicant?
Okay, can we hear from the applicant?
Yes, we were not aware of the impervious to pervious.
Excuse me, could you state your name and address?
Oh, my name is Matthew Robinson, 184 Sea Colony Parkway,
Thank
St.
you.
Augustine, Florida. When we applied for the permit, we were not aware of the impervious to impervious percentages that were allowed. We had gone through the normal process of applying everything through the HOA for Sea Colony and were approved. Then our pool builder went ahead and went to apply for the building permit, and that's when we were informed that there's a difference between the impervious to pervious, which then we went ahead and filed for the variance.
Our house and our driveway put us at 50. We're already over.
Right.
And that was existing building.
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah. Did you ever think of redoing the concrete driveway?
We did, but it's not.
I think it still might not put us to the level of where we might be. I'm not sure.
Because they
It
said
might be a little bit
pavers
more
are-
than 400. It might be a little bit less than the 400, still less than the 450 square
Is
feet.
that figured out?
100% sure on that.
now, Bonnie.
Okay, all right.
And do we know when the final reading or final approval from the commission might be expected?
It will be the first Monday of next month. That's the third and final hearing.
So,
At that point, it would go into, once the commission weighs in on it, if they do decide to approve it, it would be effective almost immediately. But this started, I want to say, a month and a half or so ago. It was brought to us by the pool company. I didn't take their money for a site review. I explained to them and told them to get with Bonnie. Was on vacation. I said, you need to get with Bonnie when she comes back. So this has been going on for a month and a half, probably at least. So at that point, we still weren't, I don't even know if this board had seen that proposal yet.
oh,
So yeah, I mean, it takes three readings and then an appearance before here for any changes in the land development code.
and we've already seen it here.
Yes, sir,
Yeah, Don.
you actually voted to increase ISR to 50% for low density. The commission decided, they asked me to look at it one more time and dial it back down. So I took the 10% that the medium densities are allowed higher. I took the most restrictive lot, 50 by 93, took 10%, so I came up to 465 square feet. And that's only to be used for pool and pool deckings alone. And that's only for low density residential.
And it wouldn't matter that they're already past the 40% because they're at the 50%, which is what the new threshold would be anyway.
I don't think I grasped that statement exactly.
I'm not sure I could
The
say
low
it
dens-
again
No,
anyway.
I just, the low density residential is not going to go back to 50%. It's going to remain at 40%.
Oh.
Yeah, and that was the commission. So we're not just giving a blanket pass to increase the ISR. It has to be utilized for the pools and the pool decking alone. Because that's one of the biggest disadvantages low density has, is, you know, by the time you build a house in a driveway for the pre-existing houses, before permeable pavers even came out, it's causing about a $15,000 increase in the cost of a pool to rip out a perfectly good concrete driveway and install permeable pavers. Now, on your site plan, this is a rather large driveway, too. So, this is it's not an odd lot, but it's definitely long and narrow. But let me get back to your calculations, just so you know.
While you're calculating that, let me just say that I'm just throwing this out here, that if we deny and we wait and let it pass on March 2nd, then they wouldn't need the variance, correct?
I would agree with that statement, but as of now, I can't rely on the third and final
You
reading.
can't say it's going to work, I'm just saying. But I guess my reason for saying that is I don't see a hardship.
Okay, and that's why they're here in front of the board.
Right.
Yeah, our meeting with the commission a week or so ago, they were pretty clear about findings of fact and hardship and this kind. So one of the requirements for a variance is finding a hardship. And so we're looking for in the application, what we would be looking for is the hardship that you have that would require this variance.
And not self-induced. I'm not being ugly, but not because you want the pool. That's
No,
not.
I understand.
And just, not to interrupt, but I think I did run the calculations for the house and the pool deck alone, just based on what was provided. The proposed pool and pool decking and the house come up to 42.4% ISR. So Sea Colony is a low-density residential, contrary to the thought process for the last 20 years. That is being rectified with a proposed modification to the development order. PUD, especially this phase was cluster, right? PUD as a whole was a cluster development, and very few people understand what that really means. A cluster development's a floodplain management tool where we utilize large tracts of land, we build the houses and the structures on the best land. Then we use the rest of the land, the low-lying, the special flood hazard areas, we use that as either active or passive recreation. So Sea Colony, when it was designed and with the flood maps that have since been replaced, was built completely outside of the high-velocity wave action zones, landward of the coastal construction control line. So if you look at it from an aerial, you'll see big troughs where there's nothing. That is a cluster development. So that's kind of how Sea Colony started in the late 90s. Unfortunately, we don't know what code. Nobody was here. Even it predates Bonnie. So that's why we're proposing a modification. Well, we're not proposing it, but Sea Colony and the developer are proposing a modification of the development order to bring it up to what it was designed for. And you may be seeing that next month. That's a little history on Sea Colony.
But why is there, according to the application, that 50% of the already exceed the accepted 40%?
I couldn't tell you, sir. I have actually.
Anyone police?
Well, it would have been during initial plan review when they poured a concrete driveway. Keeping in mind, ISR and the regulation of it's not always been a long-standing regulation, but probably if you went, I'm not sure when this house was constructed, it's in here somewhere, but 2007.
Not by us.
So at that point, maybe ISR just wasn't an issue. I couldn't begin to speak how the city handled its building permits at that time.
Sort of like Anastasia Dunes, they just didn't enforce.
Same developer.
Really, it's amazing.
In all honesty, this subdivision, Anastasia Dunes, probably should have been a PUD. They're designed as PUDs at a whole with engineered drainage. Unfortunately, excuse me?
Said
It's not.
Anastasia Dunes.
Anastasia Dunes is another project that's very similar.
Thought you were just, okay.
Both those are actually low-density residential. We did research the 4 or 5 development orders that occur through Sea Colony. They bounce around between calling it a low-density residential and a cluster development. So this is why we're actively working with the HOA to try to fix any of these things.
Is there any history of us approving these before?
You approved about 6 months ago, a pool on Deanna Drive. It was very similar. The owners bought it. They were at 60%.
Big concrete.
So what the Planning and Zoning Board did is they asked that the driveway be removed and be put in with, I think, 6% pavers. They didn't utilize the 10%, but we really wanted a solid deck surface around the pool. because we don't want the open with the gravel chips around pools. I'm afraid that they will get into the pump motor eventually. You have people walking barefooted on them. So that was a rather large increase in a low-density residential. And I don't remember exactly, but it was probably around 60 to 65%. And it was just, the owners bought it, they just didn't know.
So the 42% that you referenced a minute ago, that was the house and the pool without the driveway?
Right, I'm going to give you the number for the driveway right now. And this is all based on the information that they provided. I have not done a square footage calculation. The driveway itself is approximately 12.8% ISR. Like I said, it's a rather large driveway. So one thing
53 then, with both.
One thing to consider, like you did with the one on Deanna Drive, is the board weighed in the use of permeable pavers in the driveways. That's definitely up to the board. That was an option that was presented.
Or wait a month and it makes it all possibly a moot point.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because with this exception for low-density residentials, we've been talking how to enforce it, and we believe we'll enforce it the intent the way it's written. A 465 square foot exception to the code for pool and pool decking alone, not going into all the calculations to figure everything else out existing. It would be if you want to apply for a pool and pool deck, if you're 465 or less, you can utilize the exception, but if you go above it, now you're going to have to start demonstrating compliance with all the other codes. And I wanted to talk about that later today, but I guess now is as good a time as any.
If we approved it on contingent that they change the driveway to pavers and the rule passes, could we revert back?
Yes, sir. With the option of a revision, I know their pool packet's ready for submittal. You could do that, and obviously pools were going to take 3-4 months to build on average, depending on the workforce available.
Like 6 to 9.
Well, hopefully for this couple, it'll be a little bit faster. Summer's coming up. But they could do a revision, resubmit the documents, and restore the site plan to what it currently is and fall under that exception. There would be a small fee for administrative handling of the revision, a $53 fee. But they could do that. If you made it a condition of your variance, maybe city attorney, if they approve this based on the condition of the variance, and then the code did pass, if it passes, it's up to the commission, and they change back to the original, how does that affect a variance, or does it? It's kind of weird. It would be an irrelevant point.
Would there be no need for a variance at that
Right.
point, correct?
Right.
At that
That's
point,
what I'm
right.
getting from this discussion, is there's no need for one if it passes.
Right, so that would just eliminate the variance in all of its process. We would just use the code at that point.
Yeah.
As best, okay.
Yep.
So yeah, we could do a small revision. They just have to submit basically what you see now in front of you would be resubmitted to us to bring the concrete driveway back. And honestly, the concrete driveway is the last to go, as we've been doing these for the last couple of years to clear the way. Concrete driveway's last.
Would that be acceptable with you folks?
Wait, is that what you're saying?
No, we're just in a tough position in that we have to find a hardship for this in order to grant the variance the way you've requested it, even though it appears that possibly in the very near future, a variance might not be necessary. But it's not really the content of your variance or your request. It's the process of granting a variance is requiring us to find certain things that it's difficult for us to find a hardship here. It's not like you can't use your land or you can't use your house or whatever. So without being able to find the variance, we could grant the variance. What the discussion was is that we have the possibility that we could grant the variance pending the removal of your driveway and putting in a paver driveway that drops your ISR to an acceptable percentage. But in a month, that may not be necessary at all. You can build it just the way or 2 weeks. You could build it the way that you want to. It may not be necessary. So,
That's if it doesn't pass.
but if it doesn't pass, it gives you the ability to build a pool, but
Take the
But
driveway.
I'm
Take the
assuming,
driveway out.
I'm assuming the cost of removing a driveway is not hardship? Because it is for me.
You can't find a hardship in the pool.
The pool's a luxury item.
Exactly.
I know.
I think that was a joke.
you guys, anybody have any other questions of staff or the applicants? Okay.
I mean, 2 weeks.
I'll take a stab at the motion. Basically, what I just said, that we would
Sorry.
grant the variance pending the removal of the driveway.
But they don't want that.
They don't have to use it.
Okay.
Pending the removal of the driveway, and dropping the ISR to 43%.
Can I help you with that just a minute?
Absolutely.
Probably won't get that
Yeah.
close, but
You were doing great, and then once you got to removal of the driveway, with the reinstallation of a 10% or greater permeable paver, as per the city's land development code.
Okay. So, grant the variance by removing the driveway and installation of a 10% or greater permeable paver. What was the rest of that?
As per the city's land development regulations.
As per the city's land development regulations. Second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion?
Ask for public comment, but
Are we on each one? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? A motion would pass then 3-2.
All that, you need a roll call.
you understand what just happened
So
to me?
hopefully in 2 weeks, it makes all of this unnecessary for
Right.
you.
Okay.
But if that doesn't go through, then you still have the ability to build your pool.
Okay, thank you.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
And just so you know, if you'd like to know what a 10.5% paver looks like, just drive through the ridge one day or go for a walk over there, and the ones you see with the gravel chips.
I think Bob went.
Okay, yep, if you need anything, just come by the office.
Well, it doesn't, oh, it needed a hardship for the other 2.5%. Okay, the next item on our agenda is ordinance 20-04.
All right. We have discussed this at the last meeting. This is the ordinance regarding the protection of the existing dune systems. The city commission did review this. We have made some changes, especially the addition of the exceptions chapter. And keep in mind, this whole is a brand-new section in the land development code that's going to be massaged over the years to come. So I also took the liberty of section B, planting of sea oats, because we don't want our own codes, prohibiting us from protecting our dunes. And on the way it worked today, I had another idea for C. I do believe we are trying to start plugging the dune holes with the addition of dune walkovers. And maybe that should be one if the Planning and Zoning Board wants to consider that. Keep in mind, the comprehensive plan is at the DEO right now. We do expect approval in the next couple weeks. That's what tells us to draft this ordinance. So I've included the CPAC's recommendations. Those are all great recommendations. But one thing to keep in mind is the Land Development Code is a set of codes. It's not the place for mission statements or things like that. That is to be handled at the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is a set of ideas or goals and aspirations, whereas this is the black and white of it. But they were all very good ideas, and it's something we're going to discuss later. But I do think there's whether it could be by a resolution or something. But, the Land Development Code is codes. It's just codes flat out, black and white.
So if this gets enacted, you won't be, a homeowner won't be able to go to DEP directly.
Okay, that's a great question. As of now, I'm assuming the comprehensive plan, even though it's in its final stages at the DEO, I still consider that best available data for the will of the city. So let's say Johnny homeowner came into my office tomorrow and wanted to remove part of his dune, provided all the engineering, everything that the flood ordinance says he needs and everything the building code says he needs. Well, we would take his application in, and then we would write him a letter that says, thank you for your application. However, at this time, we're unable to comply with your request as you're in violation of comprehensive plans, CC, whatever it is. And at that point, the Building and Zoning Department will no longer issue a zoning letter saying it's not directly violating, because it wasn't. It met the intent of the code, whether the code was wrong or right. But as far as them going directly to DEP, that would be well within their rights. And if DEP saw fit to issue a permit without the city's zoning approval, they're a higher agency. We would just not we would not issue any letters saying no contravening of the codes.
No support letters. Or
Right, well, it wasn't a
is there
support
no-
letter, it was a contravening of the code. That took about a year and a half, full-blown engineering evaluations. At that point, DEP did a localized storm surge evaluation for the 100-year event. That number, based on site-specific, usually comes in around 14 and a half feet NABD, 88. I believe they were at 16 feet. So even DEP's hands were a little bit tied at that point. But this inherently will now stop that letter, so then it'll stall the process. So the only other option is you're going to appeal my decision. Whatever our fee is for an appeal, $300, I believe, plus a sign, is to appeal it to the Planning and Zoning Board, where you will decide if I erred in judgment and either uphold my decision or say, Mr. Law, you're wrong, write the letter. So if you upheld my decision and they still weren't happy, they could appeal it to the commission at the next level. Then if the commission said no, and everybody, your board, the commission, and me all said no, their next course is to appeal that decision to the local circuit court. And basically, that's where we sit right now. With the comp plan, I consider it effectively adopted by the city. We will not be issuing any letters of non-contravening of the codes.
Thank you for
You're
that.
welcome.
But if DEP approved this,
There's nothing I can do. That's a state agency.
work on it.
I have never heard of DEP issuing a permit without a local jurisdiction contravening statement. It doesn't mean they can't. That's beyond our reach.
Mr. Law, under the exceptions, what about sand fences? That's not there. Should that be there?
Sand fences traditionally go at the toe of the dune, and they go at an oblique angle about 10 feet.
Yeah.
But we could put.
I'm just,
I think, like I said, this is something we, obviously, as soon as the comp plan came through, I pushed it right out, and this is something we want to massage.
Well, that was one of my questions. Would that be considered part of renourishment?
well, it's,
A sand fence?
Yeah.
We're looking at beach renourishments, and this is from the commission, as basically when we're pumping the sand back, part of our every 5-year program. But I definitely think the better exceptions that benefit the dunes, we should be writing in here.
yeah.
And like I said, this is a creation of a whole new section, so we can continue to massage it as time evolves.
Also, Mr. Law, you said that the CPAC, and we got the email from-
Of your table,
that
and
you are incorporating this?
no, we're providing the information, and I've also put one in each of the baskets for the commission. So D,
So
sand fencing.
can we talk about that, or is?
Definitely.
Or is Sandra gonna,
Let her come up and speak.
She can come up and speak about it, but we can, the more we get on this, the better off it is the first time around. So that's what we can, something like that, C, dune walkovers,
Okay.
B, sand fencing, or D.
I just wouldn't want something like that to be excluded, because we,
Yeah, like I said, traditionally they go at the toe of the dune and they go at a 45 degree, 10 feet, and then you just keep moving them out as the sand dune keeps getting wider.
yep. Okay,
Any other questions for Mr. Law?
right now.
All right, thank you. Any public comment?
I'm not gonna hold her to the 3 minutes.
Sandra Krompaski, 7C Street, Apartment A. So I appreciate Mr. Law's comments about, this is a new portion of the land development regulation. And the reason we made these suggestions is that the resources section that this is in now is all the other ordinances, the tree, flood, they're beefier. So we took a look at what had been included in, and we certainly don't want to stop the process of putting this through, but with the understanding that these things will be added as we massage the ordinance. So earlier, well, we certainly, CPAC can't write this. So we're volunteers too. It would have to be done by the planner or an attorney in order to get the language correct, so that it would be sort of bulletproof if we have situations like this in the future. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions?
No, for me.
I mean, Berta, if you want to include some of this, I certainly wouldn't prevent it, but I don't want it to stop this from going through
Right,
in
right.
an expeditious manner.
So, Mr. Law, as far as some, because these are some good statements in,
They're very good.
how do we go about, can we include them now, or do we pass this up to the commission and then come back and
Recommendation?
You're going to
beef it
definitely make a
up?
recommendation.
Yeah.
They have passed this on first reading already. But once again, I don't believe statements of certain things are the place of the land development code. Definitely, I believe the comprehensive plan is the place for these, or possibly, and you might be able to help me. We did a resolution not too long ago. I thought the CPAC was involved in that, and that was more of a mission statement for the whole city.
The climate change resolution?
Yes, ma'am, that's it. That might be a great place, but, I mean, these are all very good statements, but a state of flood protection provided by the coastal dune. I mean, this is a code book, not,
I have a question.
yes, sir.
Can the statement coastal dune system be challenged or misconstrued in any way?
I think
Do
it's,
we need to define it, or?
well, I think it's imperative that we do use the word coastal because of the natural ridges of dunes that exist in St. Augustine Beach. What I wouldn't want somebody to do is now say Anastasia Dunes, or take, for example, the Crowd Dental that's under construction with that big natural
A normally
dune.
accepted term then, that in a court of law or something like this, if it gets challenged, can that be would that be part of a challenge?
I mean, I'm not an attorney, obviously, but I mean, it's pretty descriptive. We only have one coastline here, so I would say a coastal dune would be inferred that that's, but I do understand what you're saying.
And would we be protected by including a definition of that in Article 2? If it doesn't already exist?
I'm going to look into that. I've had some questions about that myself, so I want to see just exactly how we can do this without making it mess up what's already out there. We've got dune systems all over, and it's coastal dune system. Where does the line stop, and where does it start? We need to be able to define what that means for the purpose of the code. So,
My code go.
I mean,
Wasn't there talk about on
Thank
the
you.
Atlantic Ocean?
Thank you.
Remember that
Yeah.
last month?
Good work.
Any other questions? Any other comments? All right, do we have a motion for this?
Go ahead. I did the last one.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the proposed LDR changes regarding dune protection, and then we recommend that they be accepted as stated now, with changes possible at a later date to the commission. Did I say that?
You did
We
good.
want to include the dune walkovers, like Brian was talking about, as a C?
Well, I don't know. Usually, a lot of the dune walkovers were done by the county. I don't know.
I believe we are actively seeking
Not all,
grants
no, but.
to get dune walkover. So that is somewhere the city's moving towards. Because keep in mind, every time there's a hurricane, we have to plug the holes with beach-compatible sand, which we do store on site of Public Works.
Yeah.
So if we could fill it, put vegetation back on top and go up and over.
You're talking public walkovers.
And this is something that's coming down the road. It's not for today. They still have to secure funding, and it's a different department, so I don't normally stay abreast of all their
Wouldn't it affect
updates.
individual people?
Well, any dune walkover from an individual lot would still require DEP permitting.
Okay.
So it would be up to DEP to regulate. And here's a perfect example of DEP. Several years ago, when I was with St. Johns County, there was an outside staircase going up to a landing at a door, and they wanted to put a roof over a pre-existing landing. So I had asked them just to get a field permit from the DEP, and it was actually rejected. And I never thought it would have been because it's an existing landing. But it had to do with water shed off that second floor roof. So they're looking at many, many aspects when they go out there to protect those dunes. So even a dune walkover would still require permitting. Traditionally, anything seaward of the coastal line that moves the dirt or anything like that requires either a field permit or a letter from them saying that it's okay.
Where does that leave us?
Okay, we have a motion.
Well,
I
he
made
hadn't
a motion,
completed.
and
then he.
Berta would like to add.
Do you want to add in the recommendations from CPAC to, that those recommendations be considered for
Yes.
addition in their
Yes.
appropriate locations?
And the dune walkover and sand fencing to be included.
Included.
Okay, let's
That's
word that.
That's my motion.
Okay, let's
That's me.
see if we can restate the motion.
Why don't we just ordinance a number?
I said propose recommend the LDR changes to the dune protection. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Is that?
With the addition of the sand fences and the dune walkovers,
Yes.
and the addition, the consideration of the addition of the CPAC recommendations in the appropriate locations.
Yes.
Good. Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Okay,
Now, the
something,
service animals.
back to the chickens.
Back to the chickens.
Okay, this is a recommendation for proposal for the regulations of emotional support animals.
All right, just to be clear on everything, this is no ordinance. This is just something the commission directed the city manager, in turn directed me to try to come up with some way to assist the city in the regulation of emotional support animals. So after thinking about it and talking with staff for a lot of time, the easiest way is to make it a conditional use for emotional support animals. Let the 7 members of the Planning and Zoning Board weigh in on the qualifications of that need, and then make recommendations to the commission. So keep in mind, this is emotional support animals, not service animals. So if I say we're going to do it via conditional use, obviously low, medium, and high, but commercial, in case anybody's wondering, I have to include commercial because we have single-family residences up and down the boulevard. And obviously, the other ones are no. But what is an emotional support animal? We scoured the internet, just like all good workers do. And we found a pretty good one. So this is just the first step of how the city wants to handle this. And during the appeal of the variance and the use and whatever else there was, the commission has delayed any code enforcement action from 120 days of that meeting and instructed Max to instruct us to come up with some way where it can be regulated. To me, this leaves the biggest door open for the local government to still maintain positive control of the situations. That way, we're not blanketly saying anybody can have an animal because it's an emotional support animal. This will be case-by-case basis as determined by the local government.
I think y'all did a good job on this. I mean, really, a lot of information for us, that's for sure.
And we have included, everything we got, we included. So,
Well, and
lots of
like-
reading.
Like you
It was an
said,
assistant animal.
Yeah,
That's
and
the way it-
I like conditional uses instead of giving blanket permission to allow chickens. And keep in mind, it could be more than chickens. It could be reptiles. You know, people love snakes, turtles, and majority of the time they're inside of a house. So they would go unnoticed. But let's build a rule that works for everybody.
yeah. And the documentation has to be with it.
Right, and if that's something the commission decides to proceed, we'd have to work with the attorney to find out what kind of documentation
Well, and I
is
think
necessary.
reading through that was terribly confusing.
Yes, I
Because
agree.
there's conflicting,
Yeah.
what we were given is full of conflicting information about, you can only ask these 2 questions, and don't ask any questions, and you can't require any
Documentation.
documentation, or you can ask for something from a healthcare provider, and,
Yes, sir, I agree. It's, and this is why this is just in the infancy stages of its development. As long as we have the direction to steer, then we can get the city attorney involved and figure out what we can and can't ask for.
Well, I think the commission is trying to find a way to help that individual.
And I think conditional uses are the way to do that. I really believe it.
then it's individual by individual.
Right, and the city attorneys that weighed in the variance is not the applicable process, and that's fine. That was the only option we had. Keep in mind, when we discussed the conditional use for the service or the support animals last time, staff was very fast to say we can't do that because it's not in the table to even allow it as a conditional use. This now gives the option in the table. It would be at the very bottom. of the table in Chapter 3.
Did we refund that lady?
We have done nothing yet. We're still, this is just, we stopped for a little bit. We're going to proceed with this and see what the commission wants to do. And if there's a possibility that we do go down this route with the conditional use, they'd have to pay. So I would make a recommendation to the commission that maybe we just swap.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I do.
Because the variance was their only option to get here. There was no other mechanism in the code.
Well, then the attorney said that wasn't a mechanism either.
Right, but it was the only mechanism staff had to get you to the board, because we had to advertise. So this conditional use now provides a very valid mechanism to get everybody here.
And I did go back and look at our minutes. And it's not what we said. So as a board, I think, and I really looked over our minutes this time, made sure that everything was right. Because, I mean, we approved these minutes, but they weren't, it isn't what happened.
It was a very confusing order.
It was.
Or motion, I guess is the best way to say it.
yeah, if you
But
look
at the
at
last
this-
minute, it was going down one path. Last minute, it detoured.
Right. And, if you read all the minutes, you can see that. But the commission didn't see that. They saw the motion. And that's it. And it says that we said she could have the chickens. That's what it says.
It says denied the variance and approved the use.
Right.
And Mr. Kincaid was there to help
Right,
with the
yeah, I know.
record, because it is very confusing for staff to remember everything.
Yeah,
So-
no, I get it. I just, as a point for us as a board, we do need to make sure we read these minutes.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm
If-
guilty.
And if you go through them on Thursday, whenever we deliver the packets, and you see some, call us.
Yeah.
We can always do a last-minute addendum, just like we dropped the paper off at your desk. But back to the
No, go ahead.
back to the case, I believe the conditional use is the best way to support this at this time. I don't know of any other option to give people the opportunity. I feel very strongly that everybody in this city has the opportunity to question any code in that book. And if this is how I get them to question a code and ask for a little help, then so be it.
Correct.
And just let me add that somebody submitted a letter and is trying to get the FHA rules and HUD rules to apply to this somehow. It doesn't, and this is just simply wrong. They're misapplying the law. I know the Fair Housing Act applies to everything, but it doesn't really apply to things like this. This is it doesn't apply to an owner-provided home for their own uses. It applies to homes that are rented or held for rental like that. It has nothing to do with what we're dealing with here. So they're out there fishing through the wilderness trying to find something, and it isn't there. We're a city, we have our own ability to self-govern, we have our own ability to pass laws that aren't prohibited by the state law, and it's called home rule, and we're allowed to do this. So I don't see an issue with it, and I almost wish you guys didn't see this. It's too confusing to understand. Don't look at it, forget it was there. That's my legal advice to you. Other lawyers may disagree, but that's my legal advice.
All right, any questions for Mr. Law?
So what we're asking is that you make a proposal to the commission on how you want to steer them, then they can decide if this wants to become an ordinance or not. And keep in mind, this is not an ordinance, this has never been read, this is right out of the gates, infancy stage.
Barely crawling.
It's really crying.
Any comment?
Gosh, I think
Well, this was before my time, so I was getting ready to ask what kind of animal it was.
Bonnie could read the code on what's actually prohibited, bees, reptiles, poultry. There may be a couple more, but
Well, I found out what it was.
basically
It's
farm
chickens,
animals.
but-
Emotional support chickens.
Right.
chickens meet the definition of poultry. We did research that.
Elephant.
And what?
We researched chickens and poultry.
Yeah.
Baby
Just
shake,
cover our bases.
suffered from that.
Is there any kind of mechanism where you could, in the code, where you could make a specific reference to allow something like this? Is there a mechanism?
The county last year, I believe in December passed, you're allowed 5 hens with a bunch of stipulations in all residential sectors. The county's properties are a lot larger than ours, so I don't think, I'd be very leery of making an exception saying service chickens, however you want to call them, emotional support chickens, because those kind of rules can be beaten. They're going to hire somebody, they're going to be slick talking, and,
Well, it's not going to be chickens next time. It's going to be something else, and your rule will be worthless.
going to grow and grow, and maybe we'll have a rhinoceros one day. But, so I definitely think by doing conditional use, it lets the boards look at it, each case individually, and maybe they just bring their own paperwork in and say, this is what we have, and then the board considers that. But that'll be something, if the city commission decides to continue with this upon your recommendations, that the city attorney would be involved to look into and see what can we ask for? Because I don't want somebody's medical records in public record. I just don't. I don't want to see something come back to that child in 20 years.
But there has to be a mechanism to make sure that this is an individual request, an individualized decision.
Just like we do for single-family residences and commercial, via the conditional use section. It brings you right to the boards, and the boards can consider every case individually based on its own merit. So basically, I gave them a code to apply to the board.
So we would need legal expertise to know what we can ask for and on what basis we could deny something.
I would say that would be
Kind of
very
stuck
prudent.
no matter what.
Because I'm not an expert in this and what they can and can't have. But with this, at least gets them to the board, and then we can discuss with the city attorney at the time, or when I talk to the commission about this, we may ask for I just don't know, because I'm like you, I don't dabble in the law.
The minimum I would probably think we would expect is that, without going into detail about what the person's problems are, some sort of a letter from a doctor saying it's necessary, and it would be necessary and helpful, and then you determine basically if the animal's something that can be safely kept in a residential area, small lot, thing like that. Would it be a rhinoceros? Probably not. Would it be a mountain lion? Probably not. But, certain things would be allowed based on the conditions surrounding it, under the normal considerations you have when you have a conditional use application before you. So, what did I see today? Something about somebody bringing their emotional support pony onto an airplane. There's miniature horses that are the size of large dogs, and it looked ridiculous, and I think the airlines are outlawing those for some reason. They're getting permission.
Well, the airlines have different regulations,
Oh,
I
yeah.
read, but they are, the two things that can be not emotional, but service animals are dogs and miniature horses. They're specifically those two animals. So by definition, a chicken can't be a service animal. It has to be a dog, but we're not addressing service animals at all.
Nope.
That's way outside of our purview. This
Yeah.
is only emotional support that's otherwise illegal. And then we would just want the criteria under which to evaluate their request or for us to deny their request.
And I would definitely use the word prohibited in lieu of illegal.
Prohibited.
That's just me, though.
Just saying.
But tonight, we just want to move this forward, recommended, proceed, and
Then
flush it out, they can flush it out.
the commission can look with the recommendation, or if the board's happy with this, then we can say, we've discussed this, and this is what we're presenting to the commission. They can review it and direct the city attorney to draft an ordinance or not, or tell me to try again.
Okay.
Any other questions? Any other discussion? All right, we have a motion.
I recommend for the proposal to move forward to the commission for the regulation of emotional support animals by amendment to sections 2.00.00 and 3.02.02 of the City of South St. Beach Land Development Regulations to provide a definition for emotional support animals and allow emotional support animals as defined by conditional use permit application granted by the City Commission.
We have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Opposed?
Yeah.
One opposed. Motion carries.
I don't think we should do anything with the animals.
Okay. Any old business from the board?
Mine's more board comment.
Okay.
I have a comment.
Huh?
No, go for it.
I just want to thank staff and everything for everything we got in the packet. It really helps, we don't waste time asking. It's all right there, and we know what's going on in the city, so it helps us make a decision about certain things. So I really do appreciate it, and the vision plan was nice to get, too. So I just wanted to thank y'all for that.
Oh, you're welcome, and I have 6 copies of Dairy on his desk, little packets for y'all.
Great, thank you.
I have some just
yeah.
sorry.
Do you want to discuss that, or, Okay.
When it's appropriate.
Okay.
Steve, you want to let Steve do
We'll
his?
go after
Yeah.
board comment here.
Okay. I just had a couple of questions about, it's true, I wanted to, the public to know, the sidewalks on Michler, are they going to get on the sidewalks, are they going to get striped for bicycles and for pedestrians?
The new ones?
Yes.
I'm unaware of that, but definitely we can reach out to Bill Tredick. I believe they're working on a landscaping plan between there and the Michler Road.
Okay, well, aren't they going to, they're going to stripe it for the bikes with the diamond anyway?
I would have to, we can reach out to Bill Tredick tomorrow and send an email to all the board members if they're planning on striping it or not.
Okay. Also then, the same thing on the A Street, the sidewalk, striping for bikes and pedestrians.
Okay, I understand that. That sidewalk's actually county-owned
County,
property,
I
so we'd
know.
have to reach out to county,
Maybe we could reach out to the county.
and then maybe we get them to fix some of it too.
Yeah, well, that would be great, yeah. And then the beach diner,
Okay.
what's the story? They
Pretty
opening?
exciting. We're hoping it's gonna open the beginning of March. They are doing some accessibility upgrades at the request of the building department regarding egress of the building. I go by there and check on them every couple days. I would be expecting to perform a battery of final inspections at the end of this week.
Uh-huh, okay.
Really cool, the sign's really cool.
It is, it's inside is just beautiful.
What
Thank
else
you.
would you expect from them? Quick, one more thing, and I know I'm sorry. This is not for our board, but I have never seen the parking lots so dirty. I mean, because the wind and all we've had, there are palm fronds all over in 10th Street. I mean, I've never seen it like that. It's embarrassing.
Okay, we can pass that on to
Yeah,
Bill
please.
Tredick. We have to call them anyways about the striping of the Michler sidewalk.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't cut the grass, they haven't, it's bad. I've never seen
And
it
this is
that
on
bad.
10th Street?
10th Street parking lot, yeah.
All right, we will reach out to the appropriate department tomorrow.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Other board comment? Okay, I just want to thank everybody for coming to the joint meeting that we had the other day with the commission, and I think the message from them was loud and clear that there's been some communication issues in the past, and as a board, I hope we're able to work out some of those communication issues, and when available, if people are available, to go to the commission meetings. I'm going to go to the one on March 2nd. And if they have any questions or of us, or just to have somebody there to answer it, I think it would probably be valuable. And I think the new information, again, like Berta said, that we got in our packet today, is valuable and helps us with that communication by knowing a little bit more about what's going on and more reference material. That's all I have. No other board comment?
When we go to the
This-
commission, whoever goes to the commission, could it be brought up, I mean, like, let's say Mr. Kincaid goes in public comment, that he could come up and say, I'm here for the planning and zoning, so that he's recognized about, so they know, I mean, I know they know who he is, but that everybody knows that there is somebody.
I think that's well within his rights to go. I mean, public comments for everybody. I mean,
That's
if you want to do a introduction,
I mean, it's just for the public to know that there is a representative.
I can go with the city manager and find the best course of action on that tomorrow. It could be something as simple as,
They recognize.
my
Wearing a
guys,
sign.
Mr. Kincaid's here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Fine.
the only thing is when you want to get up and talk about an issue that's on the agenda, like happened to me, and I waited a couple of hours, and then they ran overtime, and I was there, and they knew, and I was just out of luck.
SOL, is it?
Yeah, SOL, exactly. So that would only thing you might consider it might be a problem, but just to be aware of it. I'm sure they'd welcome the chairperson, so.
Okay, Mr. Law, you had another presentation for us.
No, it's not so much presentation. This is what I've been promising, what's coming. These little handouts I gave you are a summary of what you've been doing here for the fiscal year. So now it may not reflect date order or anything. It all depends on the application date. So this is everything you've done for the zoning. I had to create brand new layers in this new software, trick the computer into thinking it's a building code, create inspections for it, But now this gives us real-time data, so at any one time, anybody from the community can ask, what's happened in the last fiscal year at the Planning and Zoning Board? So we try to do good descriptions in here, but the real thing to take from here is the very last page. Well, these are your inspections, by the way. So we have a zoning appeal, zoning concept reviews, zoning, you're gonna see Z, that's how I delineate them. Conditional use, that's what you've done since October 1st. That's even including tree removals. Something that may not have a formalized application or a process where it's just your concurrence. And then you can see the results of them all as the year goes on. And there's 2 of them that you saw today. And this is a perfect example of me telling you they don't appear in date order. So if we go to the very last one, there's the removal of a 60-inch tree, because that just came on the agenda. But your Sea Colony pool variance, if you look up a page, you go up about 5 items to application 1489. That's where that, that was February 18th when that was officially, that's when it's seen today. So I tell the computer it's seen today. That way I can get it on the list for y'all. So this is what your board's going to be receiving monthly and the commission. So it'll just be an ongoing tracker.
Will it be in our packet, or we just have it on the
Nope,
desk?
it'll be in your packets. I had to get it, it's taken me over 40 hours to go back since October 1st, create all these zoning layers. I have to program the computers to handle it. Then we have to find a way to filter it. So this is the result of that.
Oh, good.
Yeah, nice.
Thank you.
It's a little information that'll help you, especially when you're like, how many variances have we done this year? Now
There
you'll
you
know.
go. Too many, huh? Nice, thank
questions?
you.
Not as many as I thought.
Well, this is only November, don't it?
Seems like a
It's
lot
only your
more.
4th month.
I was gonna say, that's not, it's not the whole year.
All right, anything else from the board? Anything else from the public? Anything for the good of the order? Okay, motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Seconded?
You don't have to
All right,
second.
all in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.